You ready to go? You ready? Oh,
I am so ready.
all right. This is Inside with Outsiders. My name is Jeremy Asgari, and today's guest is Will Yandell, somebody I'm very fortunate for having had in my life because he is a reason, a large reason as to why Outsiders is Outsiders. Thanks for being here.
It's great to be here. Great to see you again.
Likewise.
For all these years, we keep connecting.
It's, you know what, we do, and I love that because we initially connected way before before I pitched you this idea of a bike ride for Outsiders.
Remember that? Remember where we met?
Yeah. It was my friend's studio. It was on 30th and 6th Ave or something like that. And he just let me work out of there sometimes. He'd let me take his office for meetings.
And the office was like this tiny little closet.
It was tiny, but I pitched you this idea, and I was like, I'd done my homework on pitching by then. Like I had pitched a bunch of things, but I saw the value in doing something like this. I didn't think it was become Outsiders by any means, but I saw the value in, and I was pitching, and you saw it too. You were the first one to see it.
Right away.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you had so much passion and a vision for what you wanted to do. And I said to myself, whatever this is, we have to be part of it. And you were still trying to figure out what it would be.
Well, I had no idea
but
that
you
it
had
was
a lot of
become
ideas.
This. Yeah, I have a lot of ideas for sure. And there's a lot of people with ideas, right? But getting other people to believe in those ideas is the challenge, and then being able to execute on those. So I'm very, very thankful for that meeting. One, also, I think we got connected, I don't know, maybe 8 years prior, and when you were working with Red Bull at the time, and you were always within a field marketing background. Well, you just said earlier when you walked in, you started in sales and went into marketing, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So the reason I have you here, other than the fact that if it wasn't for you, who knows if we would even be here. I like to share the stories of people in our community. People are somehow affiliated with Outsiders, and discuss the events that transpired in their lives, the significant events that landed them in the position they are now, whether it be personally or professionally or both. So I always start with the same question. Where are you from?
Well, I was born and raised in Long Island, New York. Centerport. Well, I grew up in Huntington, so that's the North Shore of Long Island. Mm-hmm. Both my parents were teachers, and that's where I spent my whole childhood, all through school. And
what was childhood like for you? Because I know you're very active, and we discussed going like mountain biking a million times. Like, were you a very energetic kid?
I was thinking on the way over, like, what are the roots of all the things that I love to do now? Because my parents were not into the outdoor sports that I am in, that I love now. But so my parents were teachers. My dad was a track coach, track and cross country, avid runner. And growing up, that was my path to be a runner. I really didn't have much of a choice.
What was your event?
Well, cross country, it was standard 5K, and then track was 400, 800 mile.
Maybe meter.
400, 800, and then the mile.
Oh, and the mile. Okay, yeah, there's a 400, 800 miles. Like, what?
No.
Yeah,
I'm using the old school descriptions,
right.
But so I ran throughout high school. I ran for part of college, and while also growing up, I got into windsurfing. I got into mountain biking very early. I was always really into bikes.
You said mountain biking. You grew up in Long Island. It's pretty flat. Where would you go?
There are a lot of trails in Long Island, Jeremy. I've been trying to get you to come out.
I want to go.
We have to get the Outsiders out there. I have a bike for you now.
Okay.
So you name the time, the day, and we'll do the local trail.
Done.
And then you'll realize that there are actually trails.
Right. I'm sorry. Mountain biking doesn't necessarily need to be steep trail, does it?
No. And in fact, let me just share this. Long Island, the mountain bike
closer to you.
The mountain bike group the mountain bike club on Long Island is one of the largest in the country.
Really?
Surprise, right?
Yeah.
So, there's a ton of great trails. That organization is called Climb, and they have put so much work into developing a trail system that you'll be surprised when you first experience it.
I'm looking forward to it. I mean, for me, when you say mountain biking, it's so nostalgic for me because I used to go to summer camp when I was a kid. I moved there for 3 years, and you always got to choose activities. They get a list to choose from. My activities, without fail, were always basketball, soccer, and mountain biking. And it would be road biking as well. So I learned how to like properly sit in my seat, go down like weight distribution, go down the hill, go downstairs. It was fun, yeah.
That's awesome. When I was a kid, the term mountain biking had not even been developed yet. So I think, I remember having BMX bikes as a kid, and what we would always do, because there was so much development happening around where I lived, we would go find construction sites over the course of the summer that were in just the phase of where everything had been cleared out and it was all dirt.
Yeah.
And those were just amazing places to ride, and probably cause a little bit of trouble.
Of course,
I think that definitely those are the roots of my love for mountain biking now, for sure.
For me, it was BMXing as well. I actually built my own BMX piece by piece because I was bored and needed something to do. And my mom suggested, my mom suggested I find a hobby. I'm like, I like BMX bikes, so piece by like GT parts, dyno parts, mongoose, like a random collection of parts for this BMX, which I still have.
That must have been a lot of fun. Building your own bike and then riding it?
It was. I mean, it was a beautiful bike, random. I wish I built a bigger bike so I could still take advantage of it. It's tiny. So growing up in Long Island, you're doing all these activities where your parents, obviously track, your dad's kind of encourage you to run. Were you a scholarship athlete in college, or what school did you go to?
I went to Denison University.
In Ohio?
In Ohio.
Do you know I went to my freshman year of college at Ohio Wesleyan?
No kidding.
Yeah, Ohio Wesleyan University.
How did I never know that?
And my first team, I played basketball there, and the first team we played against was Denison.
Get out of here.
Yeah, I remember playing against them because they had a 6'10" player.
You never shared this with me before?
I didn't know you never shared the fact you went to Denison.
What kind of relationship do we have? We never shared these
I'm Jeremy.
details.
Nice to meet you.
Great to be here.
Did you go there all 4 years?
I was recruited there for the cross country and track team.
Yeah.
They were D3 though.
Yeah.
And, as I said, my dad was a track coach, avid runner. It was a totally different time back then in regards to your parents and the influence they had over your life, at least for me. I'd never had a passion for running that similar to what I have now for mountain biking or for, sailing or whatever else I do now. But I was recruited to Denison to run and got out there. I ran my first year, I ran my second year, but it was such a different environment than my high school team.
I'm not sure how you mean it's different, but for me, I wanted to leave after my first semester.
Yeah.
I hated it. And then I remember especially, so I was on the basketball team, and every guy that wasn't from Ohio, predominantly all the guys from the East Coast, all quit. They didn't want to play at all. And when I was the last one on the team, in the last scrimmage we played, because I ended up not playing any season games because I quit before them, but they wouldn't pass me the ball.
Really?
Yeah.
That must have been super frustrating.
It was, because I remember the first game against Denison, the first time I get in the game, he puts me in, and I score 8 points in 6 minutes. Like, I'm scoring, I'm playing. And the coach takes me out. He's like, "You're not playing within our offense." I'm like, "I'm killing these guys." And my teammates are like, "You're killing them." I'm like, "Yeah, I didn't play for the rest of the game."
Yeah, it's really, it had for me so much to do with the coaching, and coaching is a tough job. So I take nothing away from my coaches at Denison, but I had the greatest coach in high school, nurturing coach. He really knew what he was doing in regards to developing us as athletes, and it wasn't the same at Denison. It wasn't the same level of care, and I quickly just felt disengaged. And I also have, for the first time in my life, I have some freedom to think for myself.
Right. Yeah.
My dad's not there looking over my shoulder at every practice, giving me, written workouts to go run on all my vacations, following me in the car. And these are things now that I appreciate about my dad. My dad passed away 12 years ago, and that relationship with your father is always can be challenging, at least I found. And these are all things I appreciate now, but at that time, I was like, man.
I mean, especially as a coach.
Yeah.
Right? Is playing multiple roles here.
It was tough.
Yeah.
It was tough. And I never developed the passion of discovery for a sport that I have in the sports I'm involved in now.
Yeah.
But I continued to run after school for a long time until I, somehow fell into the craze of barefoot running, and and ruined my Achilles. And so I was a runner. You know,
Yeah.
I didn't hate it, but so running lasted for a couple of years at school, and then I decided to play rugby for a couple of years. And
Really,
you know,
rugby?
rugby.
Were you? I mean, that's a big guy sport.
It was. Guess you know what? It was funny. I think our first game was against. You went to Ohio Wesleyan.
Yeah.
I think that was the first game.
Really?
And
You played for the school team.
there were some big boys at Ohio Wesleyan.
In the Midwest in general. Like,
Yeah.
when I left Ohio, I played basketball there. You know, I didn't play the full seasons I left, but the difference between the builds in Ohio versus the guys that played in the city. I went to Hunter College. That's where I graduated from, and there's a ton of New York City guards. So it was tough guard play. So it wasn't as easy for me to play against them. I still did well, but the guys I played with in Denison, in Denison, were like 6'10", like 7-foot Division III players. These are big guys.
Yeah.
You didn't see those kind of big guys in the city, from New York. Yeah.
Yeah. That was my.
And you're playing
experience.
rugby against them. I'm
We
playing
walked
basketball.
out on the field. I'm looking at the other side. I'm like, what did I get myself into? But I was a runner. I played wing. You know,
Yeah.
so as long as I could run away from them, it wasn't as brutal for me. And I think I escaped that game without
So
too
your
much.
injury wasn't from rugby; it was from barefoot running.
Yeah, it's a whole other story. I fall into trends very easily. And I read, what was the book? There was a book that came out that described this group of Mexican runners that lived in the hills in interior Mexico, and they apparently were the greatest runners on the planet.
Okay.
Ran barefoot, never had any injuries. And the whole point of the book was to tell their story, but also to describe the benefits of barefoot running.
Right.
And being a runner my whole life, I'd had multiple injuries. I had shin splints, knee problems. So the author of this book basically positioned barefoot running as a cure-all. So I started, picked up a pair of those Vibram 5-finger shoes. You remember those?
Yeah.
And
Those have no support, no cushion.
No.
Yeah.
They advised, to follow a very specific transition into barefoot running where, you run a couple miles the first week and you don't really do too much mileage in the beginning. I think I had a couple short runs and then I was like, wow, this feels great. And it was right here in the city when I injured myself. It was before a meeting and I put my silly Vibram shoes on and I went out for a 5-mile run on the west side running path, and I think I tore my Achilles during that run. I didn't realize it at the time. It wasn't a ruptured Achilles.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
So as it healed, it developed scar tissue, and now I can't run without having Achilles pain. So I gave up running, took up biking, and
Yeah.
it was all meant to be because mountain biking is.
And you could probably, this biking is a sport you can do a lot longer because there's no impact.
Yeah, some forms.
Well, yeah, I guess
if I
not
wore
mountain biking.
Lycra and rode my bike on the road all the time, you're right. It's low impact, and that's what those guys probably like about
Yeah.
it. But mountain biking, it's impact in a different way.
I associate mountain biking with broken clavicles.
Yeah, well, that's happened.
Yeah. You as well?
I actually tore my rotator cuff mountain biking. So, but it's all worth it. It's.
Honestly, it is. It beats the treadmill. It beats
sure.
the stationary bike.
For sure.
As long as you're
Yeah, got to be outside, right?
outside, active, and social. That's the 3 pillars of outsiders.
Yeah, it's not only for fitness, but I find that mentally and emotionally, when I finish a ride, I am so refreshed and just happy to be alive.
Well, and on top of that, of course, because you're going downhill at crazy speeds you're not supposed to. But there's also, it sounds like there's a community too. And the built-in community is also essential for mental well-being.
Yeah, it's an amazing community, which you probably find in a lot of outdoor sports, but the mountain bike community especially, it's a group of people that have this common love of riding bikes in the woods, and nothing else matters. There's no other division. There's no discussion of what your profession is or where you're from or what your political leanings are.
Yeah.
It's all just people that love to ride, and it's amazing the variety of beliefs and backgrounds, and doesn't matter.
And I feel like that's sports in general for the most part, like
Yeah.
the playing field.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the things I love about it.
Same. So you go to college, you go to Denison, you finished up there, or did you?
Yep.
Yeah.
4 years at Denison.
What'd you study?
I was a political science major.
Why'd you choose that?
So the, apart from me kind of being channeled to run as I was growing up, I come from a family, my parents were teachers, but my mom's side of the family were all attorneys in Brooklyn.
Okay.
And I grew up fighting with them and debating with them, and I always felt like I could be really good at this because, I'd win every argument that I had with them, of course, right? Mm-hmm. So I felt that my path had been somewhat set, that I was going to go to school and take the LSATs, go to law school and become a lawyer, join their firm, and that was it. I didn't really think of the world outside of that and what a career could be or what I should look for in a career. You don't think about those things as a kid. So I went to school. Poli-sci was the major with the thought that I would eventually get out and go to law school. And once I graduated, that summer after I graduated, I worked in the family firm in Brooklyn. And it really only took a week for me to decide that was not going to be the life for me.
What was it like?
Commuting from the island every day, jumping in the back of my grandfather's car, that was brutal. Of course, now I drive all the time, so I didn't learn much from that. But it just wasn't a happy place. Mm-hmm. First of all, I was in an office all day, and that is not the right environment for me. Right. I think eventually that's what led me to be attracted to field marketing, because this scenery always changes, Yeah. But what I found, my experience was that everyone was coming in with a problem, and they weren't easy problems to solve, and they weren't always solved, and it was just like I said, for me, it wasn't a happy place to go to.
And what year was this in your college career?
This was after I graduated.
So
I'd never experienced, I don't even think that internships back then were as big as they are now. So I only knew it from the outside. And likely had I worked in a firm that was practicing trial law or a different type of law, they were in mainly landlord-tenant law. So you can imagine that the cases were, no one was happy, everybody was angry about something. And it wasn't for me.
So what was your thought process then? You obviously, you've gone to school for this, your whole life you're thinking that's your path. When you realize it's not, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think I remember telling my parents that I was no longer interested in taking the LSATs, and they were pretty understanding in that they were like, okay, what can you do? But to step back, so I mentioned I'd been windsurfing while I was in high school, and windsurfing likely was the first action sport that I had become involved in. My dad was in the Coast Guard. He was always a sailor, so I was always around water. I was a swimmer as well. I never was a competitive swimmer, but I loved the water. My mom was a swimming instructor in the summers. I taught swimming. Always around the water. Was windsurfing in high school, and that was my first exposure to the world of action sports. And I loved windsurfing. In fact, I loved it so much that before I went to college, my dad offered me the option of instead of him paying for college, he would send me away to just go sail and, see what I could do with that.
He offered that, really?
I think likely it wasn't a serious offer, but so, I make this decision not to pursue law. And by that time, snowboarding was starting to grow. And I had, for a short period, before I worked between graduation and before I worked in the firm, I lived in central Pennsylvania with my college girlfriend for a winter season.
Okay.
And a ski resort had just opened up there, and I got a job at the ski resort. And I had 60 plus days on the snowboard while I was there. Luckily, it was a good winter for snow, right?
I don't think those exist anymore.
No. But back then they got snow. So I fell in love with snowboarding. And snowboarding was a lot more accessible than windsurfing, because by that point I was only windsurfing when the winds were perfect, and it was super expensive sport. So I got back from that. I decided that I didn't want to pursue law. And then I'm like, what am I going to do with my life? And to buy the time, I got a job at a ski shop, local ski shop on Long Island. And this, again, is when snowboarding was exploding. And while there, I was assigned to work in the snowboard area on the ski floor. But the owners of the shop quickly decided they needed to create a separate section within the shop for snowboarding products, because there was such a separate division between skiers and snowboarders. So, I was relatively responsible young guy, and showed up at work on time and had passion for the sport. So they assigned me and I think one of my buddies to develop the design and build this shop over the summer. So we created this separate upstairs space, and they sent us out to the SIA show, the ski show that happens every year out in Vegas, to purchase all of the goods for the shop. That was my first exposure to the world of the industry.
Right.
And that was eye-opening. I never knew that even existed before. I had no clue how products were purchased. Mm-hmm. So I really started to realize that I could make a career out of doing something that I love. Because what could be better than talking about snowboarding all day, and being able to go snowboarding as part of your job. So I loved the ski shop job. I was immersed in what I loved to do. And while I was there, I started to get to know all the reps that would come into the shop. And there was this one rep, Alex, who worked for Airwalk.
I remember Airwalk.
You remember Airwalk?
Skateboard shoes, also snow. I think the first snowboard boots, I don't snowboard, but I tried. I had Airwalk snowboard boots.
Yeah. So back then, they were at the top. Their best snowboard boots, they were competing with Vans, but they were a product that we were selling a ton of Airwalk boots. Got to be good friends with this guy, Alex. Alex, surfer guy, lives in Long Beach, amazing surfer. I looked at him, I'm like, this is the guy. This is who I want to be. And we became really good friends. And he made an offer. He said he needed help, and he wanted to know if I'd be interested in helping him out as a sub rep for Airwalk. So I jumped on it without discussing pay, without discussing what that would be. I was like, absolutely, I'll do whatever you need. And I started working with him. Mainly my work with him was carrying around his sample bags of Airwalk shoes and Airwalk boots. And so I spent the next 6 months working with Alex, and I don't think he paid me once. We're still the closest of friends. Right. So I joke about this with him all the time. I don't think I got paid once in that 6 months, but I knew that it was an investment in a future career in action sports. I knew in my heart that it was the right thing to do. And my parents thought I was nuts because
you weren't getting
paid. Get paid, but I said, hey, listen, trust me. I know this is going to lead me to the right place. Yeah. And eventually, as Airwalk was growing at that point, I was offered a full-time position. Likely, it was probably a year later, and I joined Airwalk, and I spent close to 5 or 6 years at Airwalk as a sales rep. And I was selling to all of the skateboard shops, ski and snowboard shops in the Mid-Atlantic, and just continued exposure to the industry and what the potential could be. Yeah. And that was the start of my career.
That's great that you had the intuition to know that. I mean, it's also a super new industry then. I mean, even skateboarding, for that matter, it was 10 years old by then, 15 years old.
Yeah.
So the fact that you saw that insight, I mean, it was obviously blowing up because there was news reports on snowboarding and how people thought it was a problem on the mountains. Skiers did, they're ruining the snow. I remember watching a few of those.
I loved all that.
Yeah.
I loved it. I
Yeah.
love that.
And look, we've got a snowboard behind us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's amazing, fitting.
Yeah.
I love being the outcast and
The outsider.
the sport that all
Yeah.
the skier, the outsider, exactly. The sport that all the skiers hated, you know, because
Yeah.
the skiers back then, I never wanted to be a skier.
Right.
You know,
But now it's funny. It's the reverse.
I know.
Yeah.
It happens like that, right?
Yeah.
Everything goes in cycles.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, probably not right for our chat now, but I could tell you crazy stories from back then.
I mean, you feel free to share if there's any that are good.
It was just a crazy time.
Yeah.
I think the rebel outsider attitude that I appreciated so much out of the sport, from the sport, was one that everyone just wanted to take to the extreme. So whatever companies could do that was against the grain,
Yeah.
they would do. And especially it was a fun time to be part of that industry, and it was wild and just a great experience to be part of that sport exploding.
I mean, that's historical significance for the sport. That's the birth of the sport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was awesome. It was awesome.
So what was the next step after them?
So Airwalk, unfortunately, this was a lesson for me that I learned at Airwalk, in that they had become so popular, and skateboarding had become so popular in the mainstream that everyone wanted skateboard shoes. They wanted to dress the part, whether or not they were involved in the sport or of skateboarding or snowboarding. And Airwalk made the decision to begin selling to every possible mainstream retailer they could. And for a brand that was developed by a core scene within a sport that prided itself on
Anti-establishment.
being
Yeah.
anti-establishment, quickly Airwalk's street cred was ruined.
They sold out.
They sold out.
Yeah.
They sold out in a big way. And, I grew tired. I was like, I can't continue to live this lifestyle and take myself seriously. So for a very brief time after Airwalk, I moved into the digital web advertising sales industry.
Okay.
Working for an entertainment gaming site called, I can't even remember it. I try to block this period of my life out.
Why?
It just was brutal. I was back in I thought I should grow up and get serious, so I took a job that got me back into it all. Right. I learned sometimes you have to learn, right?
Yeah.
So the office was on 35th, just a block from Penn Station. I was commuting every day. I was, wearing collared shirts to work and selling digital advertising. The site was Uproar. Uproar was the site. It was owned by Vivendi Universal. So, just one extreme to the other. And I quickly realized that was a bad move. But also at the time, I was, I met my wife, and I was starting to think about building a family together. But I wasn't happy. And then 9/11 happened. And when 9/11 happened, I didn't want to work in the city anymore. So I left Uproar without having anywhere to go. And I connected with the Red Bull field marketing manager, just randomly. He was a mutual acquaintance from back in the snowboard days, and we just happened to meet and have a beer at a bar. And he said, "Hey, we're growing and we're looking for another FMM, field marketing manager, on Long Island. Is that something that would be of interest to you?" And at this time, I really didn't know a lot about Red Bull. I knew Red Bull from going out west to Mount Hood for Airwalk summer meetings, and I would see the Bulls and Sun, and didn't know it was an energy drink until I took a trip out to Mount Hood and had my first Red Bull. But I knew the brand. I knew that they were popping up at all the coolest events.
Yeah.
And happened to meet this guy, and he mentioned that there was going to be this position open. And immediately in my head, I'm like, this is the job. This is what I'm going for.
That's so, I mean, your intuition knew, right?
Once again, I don't know how. And of course, at this time, my wife and I had proposed, and we had our wedding planned. I'm between jobs. You know, our parents are looking at me. Our parents being very conservative people that grew up in Istanbul.
Right.
And, you know, American culture was not something that I think they fully understand. They had no idea what Red Bull was, but here's this guy that's going to marry their daughter who doesn't have a job and is you know, saying, hey, I'm going after this energy drink job. So, but I think they had faith in me. And so I set my mind to getting my foot in the door at Red Bull. And it took a while. You know, they were not in a rush to hire people. I think I had 3 or 4 interviews over the course of 4 months leading up to my wedding. But then I got the job right before we were married, and I was their first field marketing manager. You know, when I started, I was covering Long Island, and then I spent 12 or 13 years at Red Bull. And
I met you while you were at Red Bull.
You did.
I forgot who connected us and why. I must have been looking for a partnership with something. And thank God nothing happened then, because I didn't know what I was doing back then. Took a little while to learn.
But you had a vision.
I had a vision.
Is that when we met in the closet?
No, I met you in the closet
office
with Outsider. No, before Outsiders, but it was. You weren't at Red Bull when I met you at the office, the closet office.
Oh, right. That was the next gig,
Cliff.
Right? Yeah, Cliff Bar.
Yeah, Cliff Bar. So outside Red Bull, I can't remember who connected us, but it was for some event, and I don't know if we actually met in person or maybe we did at an event, but I don't really have a strong memory of that.
Yeah. That was an amazing experience. Amazing company, greatest group of people, and what a valuable education in just marketing and field marketing. Because if you look at companies now, that model that Red Bull built is being replicated by so many other action sports companies. So to be involved in that and to join as early as I did after the product had just landed on the shelves less than a year before I came to the company, it's just such a great memory that helped shape me, you know, to shape my career. My kids' lives were, you know, for the better because of Red Bull. And I think
it's really interesting how they weren't selling energy drinks, they're selling lifestyle, which every successful brand does, right?
Totally.
So I think it's amazing that was duplicated. I mean, I guess Airwalk was as well in a sense.
Yeah, and at Airwalk, the idea of field marketing hadn't even really been established. But I was doing a lot of it. You know, we would do demos on snow and meet consumers and talk about the benefits of our products. And so I made a shift from being in sales, and by that point I just was growing tired of sales, because what I wanted to do, you know, I think I was more creatively focused. I wanted to convince people to buy products, to buy goods, rather than selling, you know, to a shop, right? To the owner or the buyer of a ski or a snowboard shop.
Right.
I wanted to convince the consumer,
right?
This is the right thing for you.
Right.
And I think that's why the idea of field marketing at Red Bull appealed to me so much, because it took me from the business to business to the business to consumer. And there was such an openness to creativity at Red Bull and finding ways to connect with consumers at the right time and in the right place. And the culture was absolutely matched the brand.
Right.
So I realized that was the right path for me, is to be more of in a marketing role than than
Well,
sales.
if
Like
you're
I
a
have
creative, then you need that in your life every day. Sales
100%.
will kill your creativity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, now, we'll get to it. I'm back in sales, and I so appreciate the challenge of it. But I think at that point, I needed to be in a more creatively focused position in which
Yeah.
I was, could use my strengths at interacting with people as part of my job.
Right.
And all of that too was just learning about myself and who I was and where my strengths were. And
Yeah.
so Red Bull was fantastic.
So from Red Bull, you ended up in Cliff Bar, right? Or was there in between?
Yeah, there was another in between, another lesson, another.
What was this one?
So by that point, I'd been at Red Bull for a long time, and I never fell out of love with the culture and what we were doing. But you reach a point in your career where you just don't see what the next step is going to be to advance. And I got I think it was a headhunter, or it might have been direct, but Equinox Fitness reached out to me, and they were developing a field marketing program, global field marketing program. And I think what attracted me most was the title and the responsibility. Didn't think much about what I was stepping into, what the culture was, what the priorities of this role were. I didn't match up what I loved most about what I was doing at Red Bull and what I wanted to be doing in my next step.
What was the thing you loved the most? Was it the creative aspect or direct to consumer?
I think what was most important was the culture, the culture of working with people that were like-minded, and it was the product that I believed in.
Right.
It was the strategy, the creativity, the level of ownership that was provided at Red Bull. And none of those things really were in place at Equinox. They were different. Not that there was anything wrong with what was happening, but I walked into another position that just took me out of where I was most comfortable. And I was most comfortable in action sports. I was most comfortable in, a culture that you had people that were just passionate about what they were doing. And I also had learned by that point, and I think often we joked while at Red Bull that we had these Red Bull chips implanted in our head to just fully believe in what the strategy was.
Yeah.
But I had been immersed in that in so long that I believed that there was a way to develop a consumer base, and it was just not the same at Equinox. So I think I spent about 1.5 years there and just realized it wasn't right for me. And then at that point, 1.5 years later, I learned that Cliff Bar was restructuring their field team, and Cliff Bar again was similar to Red Bull in that they were making a product that supported athletes, that benefited athletes, and I was immediately drawn to that. And once again, I said to myself, this is where I need to be. There was no looking elsewhere. It's just, this is the place for me. And the reason I've learned about this and is for a reason. And that reason is that I need to get myself there.
Yeah.
And that was similar in culture, but so different than Red Bull. Red Bull was, Austrian owned.
Yeah.
And if you can imagine, the Austrian influence flowed through the company, whereas Cliff Bar was founded by a hippie from Northern California.
Yeah. You recommended his book to me, which I read, which was really interesting, Raising the Bar.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Great book. Great story.
Yeah. And pride in your work and pride in your ownership. And that was cool.
And I think, the values at Cliff Bar were ones that I aligned with in regards to caring for the planet and creating healthy products. And it was a culture that I found myself to be perfectly aligned with. And I was immersed again in all the sports that I loved. I was able to work in an environment where I was, building strategies that would create loyal consumers, loyal Cliff Bar consumers, and it was just a fantastic group of people. I was so lucky to work with the people that I had a chance to work with there.
And we had a chance to work with you because that's how we initially started working together.
That's right.
And yeah, I mean, let's go back to that closet office, right?
That's when we came together again. Was when I was at Cliff Bar and we somehow reconnected.
Yeah, I reached. I mean, I was on the grind essentially. I knew I had a vision, and I knew I had to make it work. I was tapping into every resource I had. And but by then I had sharpened my craft in regards to what I needed to do to get brand partners and what the offering was, and I had a product finally. I think the product was the thing I finally had that was worth pitching and using all my resources for. And it wasn't Outsiders just yet. It was just this one bike ride. It was this bike ride from downtown Manhattan. I think at the time it was from Williamsburg to Rockaway Beach.
That's right.
And
that's right.
And it was just this fun idea, which everyone could partake in and have a good time, and like a nostalgic idea, and something where people could get together that wasn't being in a bar or a consumption-based environment. And I didn't think of Outsiders initially. I just thought of getting this run bike ride because I had done a bike ride prior, and I felt like I was missing something. I had collabed with like this Belgian sports drink with the worst name ever, W Cup, because they couldn't use the World Cup. It made no sense. And it was just up and down the West Side Highway. Like, this is not enough. This is basic. So I was talking to a Swedish friend of mine one day, saying I wanted to do a bike ride because I got back into bike riding because I basketball player. I played basketball all the time. I had back surgery when I was 32, and I didn't think I could play basketball again. So it was 4 years, almost 5 years, where I didn't play basketball. But I'm an active person. So I picked up my love for cycling from when I was a kid, BMXing, summer camp, and started riding everywhere, riding all the time. And I started posting, like, I think it was right when I got Instagram. So I did this ride, and people started hitting me up, like, from nightclubs, because I was working in nightclubs, saying, if you're riding again, I ride too, like DJs and random people. So we did this ride that was lacking something. And then I spoke to another friend of mine maybe 2 years later about this concept I had of a bike ride, but I didn't know what to do. And he was like, let's ride down Bedford to the beach to Rockaway. I'm like, that's not a bad idea. And I said, then we could throw a beach party. Like, yeah, we could do that. And it all came together. So we put this deck together. Before I put it all entirely together, I reached out to a couple of friends of mine that were in marketing. The people who were seeing these decks all the time and approving them or declining them. They were telling me, this is what you need to put in the deck. And this is their offering. And this is your value. So like, you sure? Okay. So I started pitching. And I had already gotten that down with the initial brand partner. But when I reached out to you, we'd already been in contact. So it was kind of like already a warm intro. And I pitched you, and you just were like all about it. I remember leaving that meeting like, oh my God. They said, yeah. They said he's all about it.
I think it was like right away.
But what's funny is, I already allocated your budget for that year. So you weren't signing on for this year. So I asked you, when do you allocate your budget? You said November. So I reached out to you in October with the hopes that maybe we can get a little piece of that. And we did. And remember, I'm going to ask you why you agreed to being part of that and why we had never worked together. You've known what I'd done in nightlife. You've seen the presentation.
Yes.
And you've answered this question for me before, but I want to ask you again.
Oh, I hope my answer is the same as what I've answered before. First of all, when we first met, you were building this guide service, nightlife guides in all of the big cities.
It wasn't actually purely nightlife. Nightlife was a component. It was to be able to provide
like a local, almost like a built-in local friend.
Exactly.
That you almost like you had a family member or a good friend that was living in the city, and that's always the best trips when you know someone. When we visited Istanbul, we had that. We had family in Istanbul, and you see all of the parts of the city that you want to see. That was your idea.
Yeah.
When we
well,
first
it was
met.
Actually a mutual, me and a friend of mine, Mike. Yeah.
Right. So that I've just recalled that. So when we met for the Rockaway ride, these are the origins, right?
Yeah.
This idea around the Rockaway ride. So Cliff Bar bikes was everything Cliff Bar. That was what was the origin story of Cliff Bar brand, was that Gary was a big cyclist, and the whole story about how Cliff Bar originated was that he was riding through the Alps and he only had power bars, and he ran out of food and he was on his last power bar, but he couldn't eat it because it was just so. They're not a sponsor, are they?
Nope.
But
everyone who's eating a power bar knows.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not eating it because you like the taste.
he couldn't have another one.
But we can like the taste if you want to sponsor us.
But anyway, so bikes were central to our story.
Yeah.
But I think what the challenge that Cliff Bar had was that I think a lot of companies have challenges in evolving their strategy, seeing opportunities outside of what they've known works. And Cliff Bar, at that point that we met, the timing could not have been better, because I think I was relatively new to the position. They were trying to figure out, how do we expand our consumer? How do we draw more people in that are not hardcore athletes that will start to become Cliff Bar consumers, Cliff Bar loyalists? And so we needed to evolve, and that's when we met. And you were doing a ride so different than all of the rides that Cliff Bar had done. All the tours and the Grand Fondos. This was truly a ride that you could only do in New York City with a group of people that did not. I don't think you all defined yourselves as cyclists or athletes.
No one did.
But you love to ride.
Yeah.
And what a fun ride you had planned. So the timing could not have been better. And I also knew you, and I think while we hadn't had a chance to really work together yet, I think after that first meeting, I'd always wanted the opportunity to work together. But your idea was just fit with what Cliff Bar's priorities were.
You're saying it was the best timing. I'm like, I'm feeling nervous. Like, what if I didn't reach out when I did? And wow, it would have changed a lot. Yeah.
A lot would have changed, but it happened. So
Fate.
We don't need to think about it not happening.
No, we don't.
And then we supported you, I guess, that first year, and then the relationship continued to grow, and I think we added in some elements.
We added a few other events because we did the Rockaway ride first, and then I think it was year 2 or 3 we started doing a few more outings. I think we did a hike. We visited Storm King Mountain, then a hike, and then we just did whatever we thought was fun.
Yeah.
Essentially.
It was great. It was great. You always brought great opportunities. Look, I wish I had more that I could have invested in your group. I had to toe the line.
It was, you say that, but it was, if it wasn't for what you did invest, it wouldn't have been possible to launch. So you did what we needed, Yeah.
So honestly, I think that relationship likely was one of the most valuable for Cliff Bar in expanding into a group of people that had likely very limited awareness of the brand, right? Because Cliff Bar had been so focused, like I said, on hardcore athletes that's exactly what we needed to do, But I think I also had the responsibility to kind of maintain some of that strategy that had worked,
Right,
So,
of course.
But yeah, timing was perfect.
So your answer, you pretty much answered the same thing with one aspect. It was more demographic based. So you said because we had these people that I knew through nightlife, which obviously you're not going to do a nightlife push for Cliff Bar, but if they're now found in your domain, then it's okay. And like you said, that's demographic. That's
certainly that was another part of it, because Cliff Bar, I think what we had found at that point, that our consumer was aging. We had loyal 40-something Lycra wearing road cyclists that were avid Cliff Bar fans, but we didn't have many young athletes. That young athletes are just young people in general that could potentially use Cliff Bar in their everyday life. And at that time, we were trying to develop a belief that Cliff Bar works for everyday consumption occasions.
I didn't tell too many people this, but there was times when, funds were low and we had the Cliff Bar. So there'd be days I'd eat like 6 Cliff Bars.
You probably had cases in your office, right? I'm glad I kept you going through that.
Thank you. Yeah, you definitely fed me a few days.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've heard a number of people have told me that similar story. So the timing again, we needed to connect with the younger consumer. Mm-hmm. We needed to start to build out these new consumption occasions, expand our market, and all of those things are what you brought.
Yeah, thank you. What's funny is like when I was doing it, I didn't know all that. I just thought I'm doing this thing that I want to do and I feel a need to, and I can't be the only one that has this need. Because again, my background was entertainment events and nightlife, and I was just tired of my social environment, the social environment being available to people in urban environments, big cities. It's not just unique to New York, being bars and nightclubs and exposing people to the casual social aspect of these active experiences. Cycling saved us. Cycling saved us during the pandemic. Cycling became huge. I mean, for me, I started doing free bike rides every Saturday, and that pandemic is when we no longer worked Cliff Bar, and I didn't have a partner. We shut down. Like I didn't have a brand partner. We shut down everything, and then I just started doing free bike rides on Saturdays. People were like, "Oh, that's genius for your brand." I'm like, "Oh, it's for my sanity." Right. I did it because I wanted to get outside and I wanted to see other people, and I live alone, so it was my only opportunity to do so safely. I didn't want to be a super spreader, right? So I'm 6 feet away from someone when I'm riding my bike, and we ended up riding and growing, furthering the growth of our community. But it was through a personal need, and I feel like those are always the
Isn't that the craziest time to think about, that we went through that and it wasn't that long ago? It's
insane. I mean, that's historical. We were part of history.
I know.
Yeah.
Like you saying super spreader, and you couldn't be around people. Like I think it's so cloudy now because we're back to normal life and you want to forget that time. Yeah. But so many things change. And in many ways, the pandemic saved the cycling industry, because the cycling industry was booming for a good year, a couple of years afterwards, especially mountain biking.
Yeah.
People discovered the outdoors again.
Yeah. And what's funny is that people are like, it's genius he started this during the pandemic. I'm like, what?
Right.
No, I started this 4 years before the pandemic, or maybe a little before that.
Yeah. You know what I would say too, just to finish answering your question in regards to what was going on in my mind when I made the decision to first invest with you. I think another thing I always saw in you was that you were pure in your vision, in that you were really dedicated to creating experiences for people. It wasn't a money grab. You weren't in it because you thought that this could be a career that would make you rich, but you wanted to create something that would give people a new experience, make people happy. Of course, you needed funding to make it all work, right? Mm-hmm. But I've met so many event organizers and promoters that really just were in it for the money.
Yeah.
And that, for me, I want to find somebody that's dedicated, that this is their vision. It doesn't matter if they're going to get paid to do it or not. They're going to figure out a way.
Same thing with you.
That's true.
That's how you started.
Yeah. And, so I think that was another element of just our relationship and me getting to know you. It made me realize how smart an investment it would be to support anything you were doing. And it just so happened that the thing you were doing first was a perfect fit for the brand that I was working for,
Yeah. Oh, I've said it before, but thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Well, I think it's been mutually rewarding for both of us.
Definitely has. When a few changes happened in the corporate structure of Cliff Bar, we no longer work together. I was sad, but I think we had a 4-year run, which is remarkable for brand partnerships. I quickly learned, if you get over a year, it's successful.
Yeah.
4 years was great.
Yeah.
We did those free bike rides, and we got a partnership. I thought we would get this close up shop again come, the fall during the pandemic, and we got a phone call from Volvo. We partnered with Volvo for like
amazing.
2 years.
Isn't that amazing?
It's I mean, my jaw dropped. Just think about the brand partners we've had. We're working in the North Face showroom right now. We worked with Cliff Bar, Volvo, like these amazing brands. And if you go back to when I maybe first pitched you when you work at Red Bull, and you told me this is what I'd be doing now, I'd have a hard time believing you. I mean, I believed in myself enough that I can do that one day, but did I really think so? I don't know.
Of course I thought that, but I didn't want to tell you at that point because I didn't want to, blow your head up too much. But I knew, your idea, this vision, especially for the outsiders, was one that, again, I think everything I saw, any brand that you work with now, I'm assuming is very happy with the relationship and what you bring to the table.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. Like that's kind of what you're referencing with other promoters and other people, just seeing as a money grab. Once you get the check, your job is starting. The job's not over. People simply get the check and it's like, oh, we got paid, we're good. No, that's when the pressure comes on. I mean, if you're lucky enough to have that pressure, right, then you have to deliver.
100%.
Yeah.
It's a relationship, and each side, each party has to give to the relationship. So for sure, I mean, once the check, that's a lot. 100% is once you are submitting to send a check to the outsiders, the questions start coming from corporate, like who is this guy Jeremy and the outsiders, and what is this bike ride, and so I think that. You're absolutely right. That's when the real work begins, and you want as a promoter, as an organizer, you want to stand above all of the other partners that any brand has. So what can you do that will add to the value of the partnership?
Always under promise, over deliver, for sure.
Yeah.
And then also use my resources to better improve the brand's visibility. So like my guys at the Bridge Runners, I made the connection with you, Cedric, Mike. We've had them on the show recently. I know
those guys. Really well. They're also great.
Amazing. We had Mike on the show. Oh my God.
Did you introduce me to those guys?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're just fantastic.
I mean, they have a similar vision for what they're doing, and theirs is running. But I mean, we've aired Mike's episode, and he's just such a character. I mean, yeah, if you know Mike, Sace, you know Mike.
Yeah, and he's always been committed to his vision for the Bridge Runners. No one's going to tell him to do anything differently, whether it's him, his own lifestyle, and who he is, or who the Bridge Runners are. Both him and Cedric were great to work with. So thank you for making that connection.
Pleasure. I mean, there we go. I think there's a belief that people think that if you give others opportunity, there'll be less opportunity for yourself, and this is absolutely not true. You give people around you opportunity, you all rise together, and I want to keep on doing that way.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, my mom was asleep. My mom was watching. Bye, Mom.
Nice to meet you. See you at the farm. We got to connect so that I can get your 100%. Grandmother special.
Oh yes, treat. For sure. My grandmother. Yeah, we'll talk about that when we get to what you're doing.
And I already committed to it, so you got to make sure that I follow through.
I will follow through. I promise that.
I'm talking about me, not you.
Yeah. I'll follow through. I promise. So, yeah. I mean, again, you shaped my future by making that decision, and I know. You ran your course with Cliff Bar, and when you obviously they were acquired. I'm assuming, right?
They were acquired right during the pandemic. They were acquired, and that acquisition led to the field team that I was part of being disbanded. Right. Unfortunately, it was crushing because I really felt like Cliff Bar was where I would be. Through the end of my career, I loved everything they were doing. They were committed not only to developing the brand, but also to values that I aligned with, just in regards to sustainability and organic agriculture, and to health. Yeah. And at that point in my life, I had two sons who now are one's in college, one's a teenager, but they grew up the Red Bull lifestyle, drinking Red Bull all the time, and Red Bull wasn't super healthy. And I realized I needed to go into find a more healthy product that I could work with. So it was again, I felt lucky to be part of that and to be part of the team that I worked with. And unfortunately, things come to an end. As much as you want them to go on.
Yeah.
Once the acquisition happened, the field program was for the most part disbanded, and all of the employees that were working remotely were sent away.
Yeah.
And then I was like, all right, well, what's the next action sports brand that I'm going to work for? Where is this progression of the Red Bull Cliff Bar culture? What can I find that will be that next step? And of course, I had some time to think about it, so I fully enjoyed myself. More mountain biking that year and a half that I was looking for the next step than I've ever had in my life. So I was super healthy and always refreshed, but it was trying to figure out all of the ingredients that I knew I needed to make me feel challenged and fulfilled and driven. Wasn't easy. Wasn't easy, not because there weren't openings, it was just looking for, where am I going to try to get my foot in the door, and there just wasn't a lot out there, so I was feeling a bit lost, like what's going to be next. I mean, certainly I wasn't ready to stop progressing my career, I was primed and ready. And at that point, so I spent about 8 years as a vegan. I decided up in Maine on a vacation that I was ready to give up meat, and cold turkeyed it. My wife did too, but she only lasted a month. But so I'm now
Turkish, I can understand.
Yeah. So at the time, this time after Cliff Bar, I was really committed to a vegan lifestyle, super healthy, and this has something to do with this story. While I was a vegan, I never talked about it. I wasn't one of those vegans, but I get a call one day from a headhunter, and they, you have an introductory conversation, kind of like, what are you looking to do? And she's like, I think I might have something that would interest you. And I'm like, great, what is it? And then she asks, I never forget this. She goes, do you like produce? And it was such a strange question, but I'm thinking back through our conversation and asking myself, have I said that I'm a vegan on this call? Like, is this why she's asking this question? And
are you still vegan?
No.
Okay.
No. That was a whole nother story. But so I said, well, matter of fact, I love produce. I'm actually a vegan. So what are you asking for? And she mentioned that there's this startup vertical farm that grows strawberries, and they are on the verge of their first major expansion in retail, and they're looking to build a field marketing program. And this company was Oishi. And I was immediately intrigued. I'd never heard about vertical farming before, but it sounded exciting. And had a couple calls. There was interest on both sides. A week and a half later, the founder of the company was on a Sunday morning driving out from Jersey City to Long Island to meet me.
On a Sunday
morning.
Wow. Okay.
I'm like, this guy's driving out, I'm like, where are we going to meet? We met at a local coffee shop, and I was immediately impressed with his drive and vision for what this vertical farming could become. Early stages still, no guarantee that at the time that this would be successful, but I was in the vision. His drive, his personality, like I really felt like I could learn a lot from this, and it was immediately sparking ideas while we were chatting. And so, those are all the feelings that I felt when I had made big decisions before. And then he breaks out a tray of these strawberries, which I'd never tried before. I'd researched the company while I was going through all these interviews, but I hadn't tried the berries yet. And that sealed the deal.
Yeah.
And he knew it would, but I tried the first strawberry, and honestly, it was the first time I'd ever had a strawberry. I'd never tasted anything like it before.
Right.
So I knew that this was it, and I needed to be part of this and commit myself to helping this company grow. And that then allowed me, so I joined Oishi to develop their field marketing program. Very similar in model to what we had at Red Bull and Cliff Bar. But soon after I joined, they needed somebody to take over responsibility of the sales relationships, particularly with Whole Foods, which was the first retailer that we were launching in. And
that was the first retailer.
Yeah, we've been in smaller local markets here in the city,
right. Well,
but the first major national retailer was Whole Foods. And I think the guy that had been managing the relationship decided that he wanted to move on to another opportunity outside of Oishi. So I had a little sales experience in the past. They tapped me. I think at the time it was just interim. Can you cover,
right.
and handle this relationship? And I don't know that I was super excited about being back in sales again, but it made sense because I think sales and field marketing are so intertwined that there should be, at the very least, a very close working relationship between those two teams. So to take a role that would split my responsibilities between field marketing and sales, it made sense.
Right.
And once I got back into it, I realized that I enjoy the challenge of firstly building a relationship with the key people that you're going to be working with, the buyers, and then the challenge of building a business again,
right? Yeah,
and all that goes with it. So
gotta love the journey, man.
Yeah, and it has just been such a great ride. We started in one Whole Foods store here in the city, and we've grown now to over 70 stores, and we're getting ready for our next phase of growth. So again, could not be a better culture. And
it's so funny that you found yourself in these companies that are just on the verge. Like, you've always found the next thing, and I guess you've waited for this. You waited a year and a half. Mountain bike. So, like, you always let your intuition guide you, and I think a lot of people don't do that. As much as this is like a superpower, people don't listen.
Yeah, I mean, it hasn't always led me the right way, but I think even in decisions that I felt were a mistake or that I should have thought through more, all of those decisions have helped shape the way I approach work and life, and what I'm looking for. And I've been open and tried my best to understand, like, where am I best suited? Like, what is the best environment for me? What kind of work do I want to do? So I've tried my best to learn from times where I've maybe made the wrong decision, or haven't done something that was, I feel now in hindsight, was the right move.
Right.
But certainly, and Oishi I was lucky because I had no idea who Oishi was. So I was lucky that I scheduled that call, had the conversation, and quickly realized that it had all the ingredients, as you mentioned, of being on the verge of growth, and being the next thing.
That's incredible.
I love that. I love it. It's such a challenge. It's like a creative challenge in building something and growing it, and there's such a sense of fulfillment in doing that.
Of course.
So yeah, that's
the accomplishment of having. It's hard to build a brand. It's super hard. I mean, if you don't like the journey, don't bother doing it.
Totally.
It's a puzzle. It's everything that someone competitive wants to do.
Yeah, that's a huge part of it. It's a competitive side of me too, which is definitely still alive and well. But you want to win.
Yeah, exactly. Watch what I'm about to do. Watch me win this game.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, totally.
It's an important quality to have when you're an entrepreneur, or anyone really trying to build something. So you basically told us your story for the most part. I got a couple questions for you now. Okay, you've answered this. I think the answer is mountain biking. But what do you do for fun?
Mountain biking,
Yeah.
for sure. But truly, the most fun I have is hanging out with my family. We have a great time together.
I watch your Instagram stories and your posts, and it looks like you, your wife, and your sons have a great time.
Yeah.
Very active. You guys are, you live the lifestyle.
Oh yeah, we have the best time, and somehow our sons still like to hang out with us. So that would be mountain biking, and I mountain bike with my sons, and you'll have to meet them when you come out and ride on Long Island.
I'd love to. We got to really put a date in the calendar for sure. You already told me what you study. What are some goals and dreams that you've yet to achieve that you see, like you want to accomplish before you retire or while you're alive?
This is a good question. I think that it's mostly life and family, right? Like I am absolutely so fulfilled right now in my career, and of course I want to see Oishi grow, and I want to see Oishi go national. So that would certainly be a goal for a career goal. But I think that, life is short, and I have never really thought too far ahead about someday I want to do this or that. It's more so in the now, and I just like to live in the now.
I would love, that's an amazing answer, and I feel like a lot of people have a hard time doing that. I'm trying to. I think about the future way too much, like planning in advance and making sure everything's sorted. But man, you're a lucky man.
I mean, look, you have to prep and plan ahead. But if I want to take a trip this summer, we're going up to Kingdom Trails. I'm taking my son up there for the first time. Kingdom Trails, you familiar?
Nope.
Northeast Vermont, epic destination for mountain biking.
Mm-hmm.
He's never been there, and we're taking a trip. It's going to happen. Like, why wait? Why wait a year or whatever?
I agree. I mean, we were in Zion National Park a few weeks ago, maybe a month or so ago, and my cousin from Paris came with his wife, and a close friend of mine who's just photography for me in LA came. So we did this Zion trip with like 20 people. It was awesome. And mind you, my cousin that came from Paris is kind of like my older brother. So he's 8 years older than I am. So he's the only thing I'm, my brother, I have a twin brother. He and I are like the oldest. So.
Right.
But after the Zion trip, we went to, he's like, once everyone's done with the trip, let's go explore something really quickly. We went to Death Valley. And we just explored for fun. It just reminded me why I love doing this. It's like being able to show people the experience I was having, seeing Death Valley for the first time with my cousin, his wife and friend, and my friend, of that exploration. Never stop exploring. Just reminded me why I want to keep on doing this. One, for me to explore, right, and also to provide that for other people.
It is absolutely. The most memorable moments are spent adventuring and traveling and exploring and getting outside of your comfort zone. Mm-hmm. So that's what we love to do as a family. It's what I love to do, and the more we can do it, that's the plan. That's the goal. I just want to keep doing that.
I strive for that. I mean, one day I'd like to have a family. We'll see. But I would definitely hope that dynamic.
What's going on there?
I'm trying to find a wife, man. What's up? What you got?
You have a high bar.
My mom left.
You have a high bar, I know.
She wouldn't say anything. She's like, as long as you're happy, I don't care. Like,
right. That's all that matters.
Yeah. But yeah, if you got anyone in mind, let me know.
I'll start looking.
Yeah, appreciate you. Let me see. Oh, you just answered about your goals, dreams. Okay, so what advice would you give high school you, having had life experience now?
Just follow what you're passionate about.
I mean, you did.
That's right.
Yeah.
Back then, I had no idea that you could do that. I think.
That's right, because you did the law first. Yeah.
High school me, a student now, I feel like there's still some restraints on your choices that you're making for your career, for what you study for your career. Mm-hmm. And what I've told my sons is, if you're not passionate about what you're doing in your career or as a job, it's just, you're going to run out of steam eventually. Yeah. So find what you're passionate about. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, and go explore.
Yeah.
Try a lot of different things.
It's funny. I think I've always done what I'm passionate about. I don't think I'm capable of doing anything I'm not passionate about. I wouldn't work.
Makes you unique then.
I mean, I guess thankfully I'm able to make a living with what I do.
Right.
Because if I wasn't doing something I was passionate about, I'd be a terrible employee.
But that's the thing. If you have a passion, you figure out a way.
Yeah.
And you did.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
This vision that you had of like taking your passions and creating something from it that could be a career, it's gone through a lot of different, imaginings, right?
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about. I used to love nightlife.
Right.
I made that a career. I loved it, and then when it got old, I'd say I would have much rather have left it years before I did, but I didn't have a means to support myself other than that, and so Outsiders was able to gain steam. And I love Outsiders. I actually love this podcast. I love working with Chris on it, and I really think that this is something that maybe I'm wrong. I feel like this is something that can become something as well.
Definitely.
I mean, this is by the time I don't know, you'll be like episode 670, something like that. By the time it comes out.
Wait, where are we at now?
63 today. Was it 63? Yeah, 63.
Wow.
I thought about it as like Roger Maris, but yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so he's probably going to be at least close to 80 because I have.
Oh wow.
Yeah, we have
Yeah, that makes me nervous. You know why?
we have a bunch in the backlog.
You know why I'm nervous? Episode 100. I told people they can interview me. They've been asking for. I never thought. I never thought like 100. Episode 100 would be like 5 years from now. No, it was like 2.5 years. Now we're episode 100.
Incredible.
So yeah, that's gonna be an interesting one.
Yeah, I mean, you just this whole story. I think that's a good idea for your 100th episode. Is that you're the one that gets interviewed, right?
Yeah.
Because you've got a great story to tell.
Yeah, I gotta find the.
Kind of
right
tapped
person.
into a little bit of it here today in our chat, but
I tap into it with each episode we do because everyone that's on our podcast is someone that's been involved somehow.
right, part of your past.
There you go.
Very cool.
What's your favorite part of Outsiders? That's the next question.
Well, I think it's everything. It's the values that you have had, the vision to create something that was, I think at the time when we first started working together, this is very unique. This idea of getting people that are living in the city, that are in nightlife outside, and taking them outside the city on these adventures. And we need a lot more of that.
Yeah.
And you are a trailblazer in that space.
I appreciate it. I see more groups popping up, but most of the groups I've seen popping up are like hiking groups or cycling groups. And I didn't want to do just that because I like doing more than that. So we even do like outdoor sculpture grounds and like cultural trips. We do trips. We're going to Sardinia. That I'd be fool just to do outdoor adventure in another culture.
Yeah, and hearing people that have been part of your trips and the experiences that you've curated for them, you make memories and you make people happy and give them exposure to something they haven't experienced before. It's awesome.
I'm glad I do that for them because it's really a side effect because I have fun myself. I really love it.
Which is the most important thing, right?
Hey,
You gotta have
one
that
of them.
passion.
As long as I'm having fun and the people around me are having fun too, I'm good.
Totally.
The next question we've already answered. I was being that we're in the North Face showroom and obviously it says never stop exploring everywhere. How do you incorporate exploration in your life?
Well, as I said, whether it's mountain biking or snowboarding or hiking, I love to find new places to explore. I think my family shares that mindset. So to do it, to have activities where I can do that myself independently, but then also share in the same type of adventuresome spirit with my family and friends, I just love it. So, wherever we hear a cool spot to go check out, we're on it.
I'll give you some tips and you do the same, please.
Absolutely.
I'm always looking. This is one of my favorite questions. What is your most embarrassing moment?
Man, I probably have had so many.
First one that comes to mind.
Personal life, career.
Doesn't matter. I'll give you an example. The best one we've had so far is the one I can reference when people kind of have a hard time thinking of one. Is a buddy of mine, Ken Tanaka, who actually was in nightlife, did a little stint in just Japanese American. Did a little stint working in casinos because he spoke both languages, Japanese brand. And then now he's a professional fly fisherman, and he earns through YouTube, right?
No kidding.
And he also now he's incorporating rock climbing as well. He took me fly fishing.
I have to watch that episode because how he went from nightlife to fly fishing.
You guys would get along great.
Must have been a great story.
Great guy. And he talks about the progress of that. But his embarrassing story is very active. Like I said, I think you guys would get along. He and I get along really well. He decided to run the New York City Marathon, but he ran it with food poisoning. And basically at every mile marker, wherever there's a porta potty, he had to stop and take a shit. So literally, I think it was like 27 shits later in 8 hours it took him to finish the marathon.
What runner hasn't been through that? But I totally get it.
I mean, yeah. So I don't.
In the marathon,
to that
no
extreme,
less.
exactly. To the New York City Marathon, which is like packed streets.
All right. So, like I said, I probably will be driving home and think of so many stories that I could have shared here. But one did just come into mind,
Okay.
probably because, shitting is related to your ass. And I swim a lot. That's another one of my passions is swimming. So I swim at the local YMCA all the
Little
time.
side note: my mom holds a record for the butterfly at the 14th Street Y.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
Still, I think
Next time I chat with your mom, we're going to talk about
Yeah,
swimming.
for sure.
So I always do laps in the local YMCA pool, and it's typically a mix of dedicated swimmers and your older walkers that are just in there to socialize. And
Yeah.
on this particular day, sometimes they give lessons in part of the school where you have young moms come in with their kids, and all these cute moms walk in, and I'm swimming laps, and you get out of the pool, and it's an environment, you're being watched, and I didn't know it until I got back to the locker room.
But I have a feeling I know. But go ahead.
The full seam of the rear of my jammers had fully separated. So in my little strut walk, around the young moms that were getting in the pool with their kids, my ass was hanging out. I had no idea,
You thought they were just shaking your ass out, huh?
Just
they literally were.
And I got in the locker room, and I feel like a weird waft of air on my butt, and it turns out I pull the shorts off, and there's just it was the full seam. I mean, all the way around. So
Yeah, it's pretty embarrassing.
I had to get out of the Y real quick. I didn't swim at that lap swim time for 6 months, I think.
Really?
I decided to go. Yeah, I found alternate times, but
I understand.
there you go. That's the one that came to mind first.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's definitely embarrassing.
Yeah, I'm getting embarrassed just thinking about it right now.
I appreciate you sharing it. All right, so the last segment of this interview, this podcast, is a series of 5 rapid fire questions. You ready?
Rapid fire. Can my brain work that fast? I don't know, but yeah, I think I'm ready.
All right. What's your favorite city other than New York City?
Boston.
Why Boston?
Just love the history and the people and that part of the country. You don't find cities like that really anywhere.
I haven't really spent enough time there.
You got to go.
Yeah. I mean, last time I was there was visiting a friend in college. While I was in college, we played ball together in the summers, and a couple of my friends, we all went to the same school. They went to the same school. So I wasn't in Boston, though. We hung out in Boston. I was in Lowell, Massachusetts, which is an interesting place.
Yeah.
But we did go out in Boston. I have to check it out.
Istanbul will be a close second. Istanbul. Just
I'm dying
on a whole nother level. But, if you're talking local,
Bucket list.
Boston's a great city.
Yeah, Istanbul's on my list.
You
I've
gotta
never
go.
been. I know. That's a place I'd like to go. I might go in the fall if I can. I'm trying to add a new city to my list.
You would love Istanbul. And I got people there. That can be your local guides.
Connect me.
So let me
What
know.
would be great about Istanbul, or Turkey, I should say, it's right next to Iran. So the closest I've been to Iran, I guess, would be Dubai, but it's across from the Gulf. So that is actually touching by land. So it'd be interesting. My dad's from there, so in case you don't know the reference, that would be cool. But Turkey, I've heard tons of stories about. If you could do any other profession, what would you do?
When I was a kid, I always wanted to be in front of a camera.
I know. You're welcome. Look at this.
I know. Probably this will make me realize that I was lucky not to try to go into that profession. But
actor?
No, I think like media, news media. Maybe that would be it. I love what I do, though, so it's really hard to answer that question. But if there was anything else, it certainly wouldn't be an attorney or a doctor. No. School wasn't for me, but yeah, it'd be fun to have done that.
Yeah, like a field reporter,
something like that.
Yeah, I can see it. What's your vice?
My vice. I think I have, as healthy as I try to be, I've got a sweet tooth.
Me too. What's your drug of choice when it comes to sweets?
Man, it could be anything, you know. Ice cream or whatever.
I know for me it's like freshly baked chocolate chip cookies, like that.
Cookies,
sucker.
Yeah. Again,
yeah.
It ice cream or cake or cookies or whatever. And my wife is a great baker.
Oof.
So that doesn't help. But
I mean, stay active maybe for that reason.
All I think about is how many calories do I need to burn to work this off.
There's this guy who's gotten pretty viral on Instagram who will eat the biggest, most ridiculous things and he'll count calories and then he'll run it off. And he ate this, I think it's Hershey's bar that was something like 11,000 calories, and it took him something like 10 hours.
I mean, I think probably a lot of people share this, but it's always going through my head.
Yeah.
If you want to be fit and you're eating things that are too sweet, it's how do I just get rid of this as quickly as possible?
Yeah. Yeah, I relate to that advice. What's your greatest fear?
My greatest fear. I wouldn't say that I have a fear of heights, but I think my greatest fear is not getting it all in time. Again, life is short. I've lost a lot of buddies suddenly, and I love living in life and the adventures that I have with friends and family, and you don't want that to end. So,
well, when it does, you want to have no regrets.
Fulfillment. Yeah, you just don't, no regrets. You'll always have regrets, but as you grow wiser, you know what you need to do.
That was my mom's answer. That one exactly. That was her greatest fear. And it's a very valid fear. And if that is your fear, you're gonna make sure you live life to the fullest.
Yeah, I think that's probably what drives me living in the moment and not getting too far ahead of myself and just trying to enjoy all the time that I have with the people that I love.
Yeah. I agree. I couldn't agree more. Last question. What's your favorite food? And what's your favorite food?
Well, you know the answer to this, Jeremy. I love strawberries.
Yeah.
I love what
a coincidence.
delicious strawberries. And my second favorite would be tomatoes. But for real, not only because I work at Oishi, but something that can be as delicious and sweet and be also healthy.
Let's bust them out. I know you brought some stuff with you. That?
And I like champagne as well. So
did you bring champagne?
I know it was just one answer, but I got three.
Chris, you want to bring those champagne glasses and grab one for yourself? All right.
So these are the strawberries I've been talking all about.
They look fake. They look so perfect.
That's our omakase berry.
Chris, appreciate it.
That's so Japanese variety only grows in one place naturally in the world, and that's in the Japanese Alps. And basically what you can do in a vertical farm is you can replicate that environment. So we grow these right here in Jersey City, and they're grown without pesticides. They're non-GMO. They're not a strawberry you're going to buy to put in a shake, or it's a special occasion treat, because it truly is. When you try it, and when you give
you
this to
sent
somebody,
me a box once, and I was, like you said, it is a special occasion food item. I had to do my best to restrain myself from eating all of them in one sitting.
yeah. And I think this is one of the things that I love so much about just being in field marketing, and especially being at Oishi, is when people first try these, most of the time the reaction is the same. Their eyes get big, and they're trying to figure out what they just had, and it's as though they're trying a strawberry for the first time. So there's one of my top favorite foods right there.
Actually, I'm gonna try those. I haven't had those.
And then so this is new. This is called our ruby tomato. This is also Japanese variety tomato. Super sweet.
Is the founder Japanese?
Yes, Hiroki Koga is the founder.
Okay.
Grew up in Japan, came here for grad school. Once he tried the produce here, he was like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And that's where I think the vision for launching the vertical farm took place. And this is where we're at now. That was back in 2018 when Oishi launched. So this is called our ruby tomato. I was equally blown away when I first tried this as I was when I first tried the omakase berry.
All right.
Moment of truth.
Wow.
Right?
Really flavorful. I mean, I've had tomatoes fresh off the vine in Sardinia in an old school farm. That's what it's giving me right now.
Yeah. So that's the umami. That's the flavor, the sweetness of the tomato.
It's so upsetting that tomatoes here and produce here doesn't have any taste.
Well,
or like barely any taste.
I think what Hiroki realized is that produce in the States is grown for quantity, not quality.
Right.
You've got these big farms that are just growing plants that can produce as much fruit as possible, and then, can stand up to being trucked across the country.
Right.
And to do that, there are pesticides and chemicals required to grow fruit outside. And you may know, but strawberries are always showing up at the top of the dirtiest list of fruits that you can purchase. And that's the advantage of, we can build a vertical farm 10 minutes outside of Manhattan. We can grow strawberries year round. They're totally natural except for the environment that they're grown in, and delicious and always available.
My question is in regards to price point. I know the strawberries are priced a little higher.
I'm going to pop this cork. Is that
Go
good
for
for
it. Pop it. Nice. I feel like this can be a food item that's a special occasion. I guess tomatoes can too, but you think if they reach a certain manufacturing ability while still keeping the quality, will the price point become closer to what we know for these items?
Absolutely. That's the long-term vision for us. Here you go.
Thank you.
As our technology becomes more efficient, as the cost of that goes down, our long-term plan is to make our produce accessible and at the same price level, competitive with what you're finding on the shelf now from the major suppliers. So, but this is a subcategory of berries. Again, it's a special occasion berry. So think about moments that you would gift someone, whether it is a dinner party or a date or Mother's Day, for example. This is, in Japan, the tradition is that you gift produce, especially strawberries, on those special occasions.
Here it's usually chocolate covered,
right?
shitty strawberries.
So this, and I can just tell you from my own experience, when I gift a tray of these to someone that hasn't tried them before, it's something they remember, and that puts a smile on their face.
I remember the first bite. No, you know what? I'm going to take it one step further. When I opened the packaging, I remember the smell.
Yeah,
because you can smell. It smells like strawberries.
It's the whole experience.
Yeah,
and that's how these are positioned. And it's new to the strawberry category that there's a premium level that is intended for a different type of occasion.
Right.
And that's the work that my team is doing in building the understanding of like, what is that occasion that you would purchase an Oishi versus some conventionally grown brand that has no taste, you know?
Yeah.
So you like the tomato?
Tomato is amazing.
Awesome. All right, good.
Very sweet and flavorful. I mean, I don't mean sweet like strawberry sweet. I mean like for a tomato. And it reminds me, like I said, of the one I've had in Sardinia, fresh off the vine in a farm that's not growing for quantity.
Yeah.
So I haven't had that in about a year. I'm going back to Sardinia in a couple of weeks, but I feel like I got a little treat here.
Cool. Yep.
All right.
Cheers, man.
Cheers.
Here's to you and
you.
all the success you've had. It's been a great ride.
Cheers to you for helping me have started that in the first place. That's nice champagne too.
Of course. Has to be. I mean, come on.
If you're bringing these nice strawberries and tomatoes, you can't be bringing.
You're not going to buy a $5 bottle of champagne.
Exactly. Unless there's anything else you want to share while you have a platform, I think we're good.
Hey, only that I really appreciate you, and thanks for inviting me on.
Well, thanks for being here. I'm glad you accepted the offer.
It was fun.
You're an integral part of
We
our
don't
history.
see each other enough.
No.
But
I'm going mountain biking.
Next time I see you, it's going to be on a bike.
Let's do it. I
All
love
right.
biking. Anyway, thanks for coming.
All right.
Chris, thank you for being you. Stay tuned for the next episode.
All right. Awesome, man.